So if I was stranded on a desert island and I could only take one tool with me, I wouldn't take a knife or a magnifying glass or even a Leatherman's tool. I would take this thing. They call this a 5-in-1 or a 6-in-1 or a painter's tool. It doesn't really have a fixed name. And while it may not look like much, this one simple tool has given me more value than any other 3 tools combined. It has an endless number of uses, and whether you're a tradesperson, a DIYer, or a homeowner, it can be an indispensable tool for you to have. So watch as I count down the 10 most important uses for this tool, and especially stick around for the last one because it is by far my most important use for this tool as a carpenter. Also, keep in mind that if you want one, I'm going to link several down in the description below, so when the video's over, feel free to go down there and browse through them. I'm Ethan James with thehonestcarpenter.com. Let's get to it. People mostly call this thing a painter's tool, so let's start with some painting functions. Number 1 is roller cleaning. Paint rollers can carry more than a half a pint of paint in the nap, and even when you're done rolling, a lot of this paint is still in there. So painters use this tool to squeeze out the excess paint. It just forces the paint out in a smooth raising motion. You can spin the roller and work all surfaces. Then after you rinse the roller, you can use it to squeeze out the excess water and repeat. It works for both full-size rollers and mini rollers, so it's a great way to prolong the lifespan of your painting tools. Use number 2, opening paint cans. The little flat head on the back makes a great lift for prying up paint lids. It's extremely easy to slot it in, and you just give the handle a little pry and pop the lid out. Or you can work the tool around the rim like a can opener, and the lid will lift off with ease. This way, you avoid bending the lid with force. This tool is also very helpful for closing paint cans, especially ones that are really gunked up with paint. Use number 3, hammer striking. Most of these 5-in-1 painter's tools now come with a little metal butt down on the end of the handle. This is primarily for driving paint can lids back down into place. Just a few quick taps around the perimeter will give you a flush seal. I wouldn't be tempted to use it for any other types of hammering, certainly not driving nails. Just doesn't have the force or accuracy for that. But if you're on the job site and you just need to give something a hard knock to dislodge it, you can use it for that. Use number 4, and this is a really big one, paint scraping. The body of the tool is very thin, just over 1/16 of an inch, and the top has this really wide beveled surface. These features combined make this the ultimate paint scraping tool. By placing the bevel face down and driving the tool forward at a very low angle, you can scrape and pry even the most stubborn paint chips. You can also use the back of the bevel at a steeper angle in a raking motion. The harsh friction will plow up loose paint surfaces and knocking chips away. It's also great for scraping caulk off the edge of trim pieces. Just be sure to not dig too deeply and begin prying up wood. This use is so ubiquitous that some people just call this thing a scraper. And in that same line of thinking, use number 5 is corner gouging. The tool head also has this blunt dagger point on the other end. This is perfect for raking out corners where 2 surfaces meet. You can just draw the tool down with a lot of pressure and it'll slash and force material out of that gap. You can also use this little point as a pick for wrangling material up so you can scrape it out later. And keep in mind, this doesn't have to just be for paint removal. You can use it to carve out dirt, grime, or nearly anything else lodged in a corner. Use number 6, spreading putty. The beveled face is also excellent for use as a putty knife. You can use it to trowel spackle, wood filler, or even bondo. The wide blade creates a lot of surface area, and the sharp edge gives you a fine, sturdy point of control. Just remember to clean the tool off before going on to use it for other things. Some harder wood fillers like bondo can really gunk it up. So those are pretty much all the paint-related uses, but I'm a professional carpenter. I don't paint all that often, and yet I always have a painter's tool or 5-in-1 with me in my tool belt. And here are the reasons why. Use number 7, nail prying. Some models now come with this little teardrop shape up near the bevel. This is for prying small nails. You just hook the wide part of the hole over the fastener head, pull it down snug, then pry up gently. This is only effective for really small fasteners that aren't lodged in too hard. The tool isn't quite strong enough to pull out large fasteners, but it can help you pull out large fasteners. Use number 8, surface protection. Hammers are the handiest tools for prying out nails, but you should never pry too hard on vulnerable surfaces like trim or drywall, and this is because you can damage them so easily. The typical way to avoid this is to slip something thin and hard, like 1/8" plywood, behind the hammer head to protect that vulnerable surface. But you won't always have a piece of thin plywood handy on a job site. So in a pinch, I just use my 5-in-1. I get my hammer claw set underneath the fastener, then slip the 5-in-1 underneath the hammer head. Now this gives me a surface to pry back on with the hammer. The wide blade and softer handle of the 5-in-1 often give just enough support to spread the weight further across the surface of the wall, thereby preventing noticeable damage. And you can really use it anywhere you want to pry something in this fashion. Hardwood floors, linoleum. Just don't go overboard with hard leverage, and this method will speed things up while protecting those more pristine surfaces. Use number 9, light chiseling. Again, I wouldn't use this tool for heavy chiseling work, but if I already have my 5-in-1 out, I'll sometimes use it for splitting wood or breaking apart other materials. The blade is way harder than it looks, and the tool is pretty stiff. So, striking it like a chisel with my hammer, I can use it to cut into end grain, which is susceptible to splitting. Or, I'll even sometimes use it to split the face grain on softer woods like pine and poplar when I'm working purely on demolition. Failing that, I'll usually just switch right over to my large screwdriver, which I did a whole nother video on, so be sure to check that one out if you want to know about another great demolition tool. And speaking of demolition, we're finally at the most important part of the video. Use number 10 for this tool is prying apart materials. Controlled demolition is the key to saving money, preserving materials, and making repair jobs go smoothly. But most of our demolition tools work by brute force. They're blunt and heavy, and they leave a lot of scarring on the materials they come in contact with. The 5-in-1 or painter's tool is the most delicate demolition tool ever invented. It's incredibly thin, but it's also extremely stiff, which means that you can wedge it or tap it into the tiniest crevices without causing damage to the surface material on either side. I really can't explain how invaluable this is to a professional carpenter. Anytime I'm trying to remove trim of any kind or pry two materials apart, I start with the 5-in-1. A little tapping with the hammer can force it between two surfaces. Then, when it's partially driven, I can apply prying force to begin working those materials apart. Other tools just don't handle this task very well. I have large pry bars and tiny trim pry bars, and they're all great for various phases of demolition, but they're all just too thick. When you force them into a small gap, they bruise all the surfaces around your work area, and it will take a ton of force to get them driven in sometimes. If you're trying to reuse the trim or other building materials involved, they're now going to have gashes and notches all over them. Trim removed with a 5-in-1 will just have tiny little scars that can easily be hidden with caulk and paint. It's also a great tool for probing. When I have a small gap opened up, I'll sometimes run the skinny blade of the 5-in-1 up and down that gap and feel for fasteners. That's where you know to apply pressure, and you can now bring in other tools to finish the demolition. If you're going into a remodel and you're just now about to start the demolition phase, I can't stress this enough. I highly recommend that you have a 5-in-1 on hand at pretty much all times. Any light work, especially around trim and casings, should typically begin with a 5-in-1 and a utility knife. I already discussed this on my how to remove trim and casings video, so be sure to check that one out if you want to see some more details on the topic. And before I wrap up, I'll throw in an 11th spot and mention the million doodads and features that are starting to come with these tools. When it comes to 5-in-1s, numerous companies are starting to incorporate wrench slots, scribes, detachable handles, screwdriver bits, even bottle openers. The possibilities are seemingly endless, and more just keep coming all the time. By the time this video is out, there will probably be a new version with like 5 new features on it. It's because at the end of the day, this simple, basic tool is so flexible and yet so reliable that it really might be the most useful tool in the world. But that's just one carpenter's opinion. Do you disagree? Is there a better tool out there? Or do you use this tool for things that I didn't even mention? Let me know down in the comments section. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below and hit the little bell beside it to turn on notifications so you know whenever I post new videos. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Ethan James with TheHonestCarpenter.com. I'll see you next time.